Bella walked into the room, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed the front of her black work dress. The luxurious bar glowed under golden chandeliers, crystal glasses lining the counter like a sea of tiny stars. A low hum of conversation filled the air, punctuated by laughter and the clink of expensive drinks. Her shift had just begun, but already exhaustion weighed heavy on her bones. Still, she smiled, a soft, fragile smile, as she made her way behind the counter. For her mother, she reminded herself. Always for her mother. Bella, her manager whispered, tugging at her arm. Table 7. Special guest. Emery Willard. Bella blinked, stunned for a second. Emery Willard. The name everyone in London knew, ruthless, brilliant, dangerously handsome, and untouchably rich. He didn't come out often, preferring the safety of his penthouses and boardrooms. His presence here tonight was a rare event. I thought he didn't go to public places, Bella whispered back. He doesn't. So don't mess this up, her manager hissed before disappearing. Bella wiped her sweaty palms on her apron and grabbed a silver tray. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. One drink. That's all. Serve him, smile, and walk away. She weaved through the crowd, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor, until she reached a corner booth shrouded in shadows. He sat there alone, a tall, broad-shouldered man with dark hair, a sharp jawline, and eyes so cold and piercing they seemed to slice straight through her. For a moment, Bella forgot how to breathe. Emery's gaze lifted lazily from his untouched glass to her face. Something flickered in his expression, surprise, curiosity, something softer she couldn't name. Then it was gone, buried under a wall of cool indifference. She set the tray down and placed his drink before him. Your usual, sir, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He said nothing. He simply watched her, silently, steadily. As if memorizing her. Bella shifted uncomfortably under his stare. Is there anything else I can get you? Still no answer. Just that unsettling, magnetic gaze. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and rough, like gravel under velvet. Stay. Bella's heart skipped a beat. Excuse me, sir, she stammered. Stay. Sit with me. She hesitated, looking around nervously. She could feel her manager's eyes burning holes into her back from across the room. I'm not allowed, she began. I'll pay whatever it costs, Emery said, his voice harder now. His hand slid into the inner pocket of his jacket, and a thick wad of cash landed on the table between them with a soft thud. It wasn't an offer. It was a command. Bella stared at the money, her stomach twisting painfully. That amount could pay for her mother's latest treatment, the one the doctors said might give her a real chance. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his eyes. Only for a little while, she said, sitting down on the edge of the booth. Emery leaned back, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. For a few minutes, they sat in silence. Bella fidgeted with the hem of her dress, feeling awkward and out of place, while Emery simply watched. What's your name? He finally asked. Bella. Bella, he repeated, almost tasting the sound. Beautiful name. She blushed, looking down at her hands. There was something broken in his gaze, something lonely and raw, but she couldn't bring herself to ask. It wasn't her place. She was just a bartender. Just a girl who needed money to save her mother. Spend the night with me, he said suddenly, his voice rough and desperate. Bella's head snapped up. What? One night, he said, leaning forward. I won't hurt you. I'll pay you whatever you want. Tears stung Bella's eyes. She shook her head. I'm not that kind of girl. I know, Emery said quietly. That's why I'm asking you. She didn't move. She couldn't. Her heart warred with her mind. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But the image of her mother lying in that hospital bed, pale, fragile, dying, anchored her in place. Emery named a number so high her breath caught. Trembling, Bella nodded. "Oh, okay." He let out a breath, almost a sigh of relief, and stood, offering her his hand. She placed her small, trembling hand into his large, warm one, and together they disappeared into the night. The hotel room was vast and cold, the lights dimmed to a soft golden glow. Emery stood by the window, his back to her, staring out into the endless city lights. Bella wrapped her arms around herself, shivering from nerves. "I want to use protection," she said softly, her voice breaking. Emery turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You won't need it," he said. "I'm infertile." Bella blinked at him, unsure whether to believe him, but too scared, too desperate, to argue. He crossed the room slowly, like a man approaching something sacred, and cupped her face in his large, calloused hands. "I won't hurt you," he whispered again. And somehow, she believed him. Later, as she lay tangled in the silk sheets, Emery watched her sleep with something close to awe. Her long lashes fanned across her cheeks, her hair spread like a halo on the pillow. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She stirred but didn't wake. Something inside him shifted that night, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Longing. Need. When morning came, Bella was gone. The first rays of dawn crept through the sheer curtains, casting faint lines of light across the king-sized bed. Bella stirred, feeling the heavy warmth of a body beside her, the expensive sheets tangled around her bare legs. For a moment, confusion blurred her mind. Then everything from last night came crashing back. The bar, Emery's offer, the way he had touched her so tenderly, as if she were something precious he was afraid to break. She turned her head slightly. Emery was awake, lying on his side, his head propped up by his hand. He was watching her. Neither of them spoke at first. There were no words for what had happened. No way to untangle the ache in her chest. Bella tugged the sheet up over her body, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. She felt exposed, fragile, and hollow. "Don't," he said hoarsely, as if he could see the shame in her eyes. "Don't hide from me." Tears prickled at the back of Bella's throat. Why did he have to be kind? It would have been easier if he had been cruel, if he had treated her like a transaction. Instead, he was looking at her like she was the only thing in the room that mattered. "I have to go," she whispered, pulling away. "My shift, my..." She couldn't finish. She couldn't say "my mother." She couldn't speak about the crushing mountain of grief waiting for her outside this hotel room. Emery sat up, the sheet falling from his chest. He was devastatingly beautiful in the dim light. Hair, strong arms, a body carved by discipline and loneliness. "You don't have to leave," he said quietly. Bella shook her head, swallowing back a sob. She couldn't stay. Not here. Not in this dream that wasn't hers to have. "I do," she said brokenly. "I need the money. You promised." His face darkened with pain. "You'll have it. You can have more, if you want. Stay, Bella. Just stay." Something cracked inside her. She almost said yes. Almost curled back into his arms and let herself believe in something impossible. But reality slammed into her chest with brutal force. Her mother was dying. She was drowning in debt. And she was just a poor girl who had sold her soul for a single night of warmth. Bella climbed out of the bed. Emery stood too, his bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. He crossed the room in 2 strides and caught her hand before she could leave. "Bella," he said, his voice raw and low, "I don't even know your last name." She looked up at him, her throat tightening painfully. "Maybe it's better that way," she whispered. Before he could stop her, she pulled her hand free and fled the room, running from the one night that would haunt her for the rest of her life. The taxi ride home was a blur. Bella pressed her forehead to the cold window, trying to keep herself from breaking into pieces. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and blue, and the weight of what she had done pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. When she stumbled through the door of her tiny flat, it was to find the silence waiting for her, thick and heavy. Her mother's hospital bed sat empty in the corner. Gone. Bella collapsed onto the floor, letting the grief tear through her in silent, racking sobs. 2 months later. Bella stared down at the tiny white stick in her hand. Her vision blurred. Her stomach twisted. Pregnant. It was impossible. Emery had said he was infertile. He had promised. Tears streamed down her face. She couldn't have a child. Not now. Not when she had no family, no future, no hope. She made the appointment the next day. The clinic was small and sterile, the smell of disinfectant heavy in the air. Bella sat in the waiting room, her hands clenched in her lap, her heart pounding so hard it made her feel sick. She almost didn't notice when someone called her name, a deep voice, familiar and sharp. Bella. She turned, and her heart stopped. It was Caleb Donovan, Emery's closest friend, a man she recognized from whispered stories and newspaper headlines. He stared at her, stunned, his sharp eyes dropping to the form in her lap, the form that clearly stated why she was here. "You're pregnant," he said, his voice low. Bella stood quickly, trying to flee, but Caleb caught her arm gently. "Wait," he said. "Wait here." Before she could react, he was on the phone, speaking rapidly into it. Bella only caught a few words. "Emery, you need to come. Now." 15 minutes later, Emery stormed into the clinic, his black coat billowing behind him like a thundercloud. His eyes found Bella immediately, and the world seemed to stop. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, his hands shaking as he cupped her face, forcing her to look up at him. "Is it mine?" he rasped. Bella could barely nod. Something wild flashed across his face, fear, hope, fury, love, emotions too big and too raw to name. Without hesitation, he dropped to one knee, right there in the middle of the waiting room. "Marry me," he said. His voice was rough, desperate. "Marry me, Bella." The room around them disappeared. The nurses. The patients. The noise. It was just him, this man who had broken down every wall inside her without even knowing it. Tears blurred her vision. "Emery, you don't have to." "I want to," he growled, standing and pulling her against his chest. "You're carrying my child. You're mine. You're my everything now. Please, Bella. Let me take care of you." Bella sobbed against his chest, feeling his arms wrap tightly around her, anchoring her for the first time in months. She didn't say yes. She didn't have to. She simply clung to him, as tightly as he clung to her. And somewhere deep inside her broken heart, hope bloomed again. The black town car sped through the rain-slicked streets of London, its windows fogged slightly from the cold. Bella sat in stunned silence, her hands trembling in her lap. Next to her, Emery sat like a stone, rigid, powerful, but his hand never left hers. His thumb moved in slow, soothing circles over her knuckles, grounding her even as the world tilted wildly beneath her feet. She glanced sideways at him, searching his face for some clue, some crack in his armor that would explain why he was doing this, why he was so certain. But Emery Willard was unreadable. As always. "You don't have to," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You don't have to marry me just because of the baby." He turned to her then, his dark eyes blazing with something fierce and undeniable. "I want to," he said, voice low and rough. "I lost you once. I'm not losing you again." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them away. Everything was happening too fast. The clinic. The proposal. The rushed ride through the city. Now they were heading to a private registry office that Emery had somehow arranged to open just for them. It felt unreal. Like she was trapped in someone else's life. Bella, Emery said, his voice softer now. He reached out, brushing a trembling strand of hair from her face. You're not alone anymore. I swear to you, I'll take care of you. Of the baby. Of everything. She let out a shuddering breath and nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The car pulled to a stop outside a small, elegant building tucked away between towering glass offices. A man in a suit waited for them at the door, the officiant, Bella guessed. Emery helped her out of the car, his hand firm and steady on her lower back. As they stepped into the warm lobby, Bella realized with a pang that she was still wearing the same clothes from the clinic, a simple sweater, jeans, and worn sneakers. No gown. No flowers. No family. Her heart twisted painfully. She had imagined her wedding since she was a little girl, walking down an aisle in a flowing white dress, her mother crying happy tears in the front row. Now she stood in front of a stranger, wearing old jeans, marrying a man she barely knew. Emery must have seen the flicker of sadness cross her face because he cupped her cheeks gently, forcing her to look up at him. I know this isn't what you dreamed of, he said roughly. And I'm sorry. But I promise you, Bella, I'll give you everything you deserve. One day, we'll have the big wedding. The dress. The flowers. Anything you want. A sob escaped her lips before she could stop it. Emery didn't flinch. He simply wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly against his chest, letting her cry quietly into the expensive fabric of his suit. I've got you, he murmured into her hair. You're safe now. You're mine. The ceremony itself was a blur. Bella barely heard the words, something about vows, about sickness and health, about forever. Her voice shook when she whispered, I do. But Emery's voice was steady, sure. I do, he said, his eyes locked on hers as if there was no one else in the world. The officiant smiled kindly as he handed them the certificate. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Willard. Bella's knees almost buckled. Mrs. Willard. She was someone's wife now. Emery's wife. Later, back in the car, Bella stared down at the gold band now circling her finger. Simple. Elegant. Real. She turned it slowly, feeling the weight of it settle on her hand, and on her heart. Where are we going? She asked finally, her voice hoarse from crying. My home, Emery said simply. Our home. Bella swallowed hard. Our home, the Willard estate rose from the mist like something out of a dream, a sprawling mansion of glass and stone tucked away in the countryside just outside London. It was breathtaking. And terrifying. As the gates swung open and the car pulled into the sweeping driveway, Bella clutched her bag tighter against her chest, fighting the urge to bolt. Emery glanced at her, reading her fear like an open book. He reached out and took her hand again, threading their fingers together. You don't have to be afraid, he said quietly. This is your home now. No one will ever hurt you again. Bella nodded, but the lump in her throat made it impossible to answer. Inside, the mansion was warm and tastefully decorated, not cold and sterile like she'd imagined. Emery led her through wide hallways, past art that probably cost more than her entire university tuition, and up a grand staircase to a massive bedroom. This will be yours, he said, pushing open the double doors. Bella stepped inside, stunned. The room was beautiful. Soft cream walls, plush carpets, a huge bed piled high with fluffy white pillows. It was too much. Too beautiful. Too unreal. I don't deserve this, she whispered. Emery stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulder. You deserve everything, he said fiercely. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you. Bella closed her eyes, letting herself lean back into him, just for a moment. Letting herself believe. That night, Bella sat on the edge of the massive bed, still wearing her clothes from the clinic, feeling raw and hollow. Emery knelt in front of her, gently taking her shoes off, one by one, as if she were made of glass. "You're exhausted," he said softly. "I feel like I'm dreaming," she admitted, her voice cracking. He looked up at her, his hands warm on her bare ankles. "This is real, Bella," he said. "I'm real. And I'm not going anywhere." He helped her stand, and she changed into a soft silk nightgown he must have somehow arranged to have ready. Then he pulled back the covers and tucked her into bed like she was something precious. Emery didn't touch her beyond that. He simply sat in a chair by the window, watching over her, guarding her like a knight. And for the first time in months, Bella fell asleep knowing someone was there. Someone who would catch her if she fell. Morning light spilled softly through the sheer curtains, brushing the walls in pale gold. Bella stirred, her eyes fluttering open slowly, confusion swirling in her chest. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft. The sheets too smooth. The air too still. Then it came rushing back, the clinic. The proposal. The rushed marriage. The mansion. Emery. She sat up slowly, clutching the sheets to her chest. The room was still and beautiful, like a dream she didn't belong in. On the bedside table, someone had placed a tray, a delicate breakfast of fresh croissants, berries, and a steaming pot of tea. A small white card leaned against the tray, written in neat, bold handwriting. "Good morning, Mr. Mrs. Willard. Take your time. I'm downstairs when you're ready. Emery." Bella touched the card lightly, her heart twisting painfully. Mrs. Willard. It still didn't feel real. She slipped out of bed, wrapping a soft robe around herself, and padded quietly across the room. Her bare feet sank into the plush carpet as she moved toward the wide windows overlooking the misty gardens. The view was breathtaking, endless green lawns, blooming flowers, a shimmering lake in the distance. It was a fairy tale. And she was the wrong girl in it. An hour later, dressed in a simple sundress she found laid out for her, Bella made her way hesitantly downstairs. The mansion was silent except for the faint clinking of dishes coming from the kitchen. She found Emery there, standing at the stove, sleeves rolled up, flipping pancakes. Bella froze in the doorway, stunned. The billionaire tycoon, the ruthless Emery Willard, was making breakfast. He looked up and smiled. A rare, soft thing that made her chest ache. "Morning, wife," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Bella swallowed hard, her hands twisting nervously in the skirt of her dress. "You cook?" Emery shrugged, flipping a pancake expertly. "I do what needs to be done." He slid a plate toward her, fluffy golden pancakes topped with fresh berries. Bella sat down slowly at the kitchen island, feeling out of place among the polished marble and gleaming appliances. She picked at the pancakes, appetite lost under the weight of nerves. Emery leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her carefully. "You're thinking too much," he said quietly. She looked up at him, tears burning her eyes. "I don't belong here." "You belong with me," he said simply. Bella shook her head, the knot in her throat growing tighter. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said, pushing away from the counter and coming to stand in front of her. He crouched down so they were eye level. "I know you gave up your pride to save your mother. I know you're stronger than anyone I've ever met. And I know that I haven't stopped thinking about you since the night you disappeared." Bella blinked, stunned by the raw honesty in his voice. "I don't expect you to trust me overnight," Emery said. "But give me a chance, Bella. Give us a chance." Something inside her cracked open, a tiny crack, but real. She nodded slowly, and Emery smiled again, that rare, breathtaking smile. Good, he said, standing. Finish your breakfast. Then I want to show you something. After breakfast, Emery led her through the mansion's wide halls to a set of French doors that opened onto the gardens. The air outside was cool and fresh, the scent of roses heavy in the breeze. Bella followed him down a stone path, past fountains and sculptures, until they reached a small, hidden garden tucked behind tall hedges. In the center of the garden stood a massive old oak tree, its branches sprawling wide and low. Underneath it sat a simple wooden bench, worn smooth by time. Emery gestured to it. This was my mother's favorite place, he said quietly. She used to bring me here when I was a boy. Told me that no matter how crazy the world got, this place would always be safe. Bella sank onto the bench, touched by the story. Emery sat beside her, their shoulders brushing lightly. They sat in silence for a long time, the only sounds the rustle of leaves and the distant splash of a fountain. Finally, Bella spoke. Why me, Emery? She asked, voice shaking. You could have anyone. Why would you want me? He turned to her, his gaze dark and fierce. Because you see me, he said. Not the money. Not the name. Just, me. Tears welled up in her eyes. And because, he added, reaching out to take her hand, I see you too. Bella let out a choked laugh, wiping at her eyes. You're going to ruin all my makeup, she teased weakly. You're beautiful without it, Emery said, lifting her hand to his lips and pressing a soft peck against her knuckles. Bella's heart skipped a beat. For the first time since her mother died, since her life fell apart, she felt something dangerous and terrifying. Hope. That evening, Bella wandered the halls alone, exploring the mansion's endless rooms. She found a library bigger than her entire apartment, a sunroom filled with orchids, a music room with a grand piano. It was overwhelming. Magical. Lonely. She turned a corner and nearly collided with Emery, who caught her gently by the waist. Lost? He asked, amused. Maybe a little, she admitted, breathless from the sudden nearness of him. He smiled, that small tilt of his mouth that made her stomach flutter. Come, he said, taking her hand. I want to show you one more thing. He led her up to the rooftop, a wide terrace with a breathtaking view of the rolling hills and glittering city lights far away. They stood side by side, the wind tugging at her hair, the stars spreading above them like a vast, endless ocean. Emery turned to her, his expression serious. I know this is fast, he said. And I know you're scared. But Bella, I'm not going to let you go. Not ever. Bella's throat tightened. I'm scared too, she whispered. He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. Then we'll be scared together, he said softly. And then he pecked her, a slow peck full of promises he hadn't spoken yet. Bella clung to him, letting herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a dream after all. The days began to pass in a gentle, dreamlike rhythm. Morning light through tall windows. Breakfasts where Emery would sneak glances at her over the rim of his coffee cup. Walks through the endless gardens, hands brushing, fingers sometimes tangling shyly. Bella found herself laughing again, soft, quiet laughter that sounded foreign after so many months of sorrow. Still, a knot of fear sat deep inside her chest, refusing to unravel. Some days, it felt too good to be true. Some days, she woke up sure it would all disappear, Emery, the mansion, the fragile bubble of safety he had wrapped her inside. And then there was the baby. The secret growing quietly inside her, reminding her with every wave of nausea and every ache in her body that life was changing fast, too fast. Late one morning, Bella found herself wandering into the grand kitchen, her bare feet cool against the marble floor. She found Maria, the housekeeper, a kind-faced woman in her 50s with a lilting accent, arranging fresh flowers in a crystal vase. Good morning, madam, Maria said warmly, smiling. Would you like some tea? Bella hesitated, her heart squeezing tight at the title. Madam. It still didn't feel real. Yes, please, she said softly, sliding onto a stool by the counter. As Maria poured the tea, a younger maid bustled past carrying linens. She threw Bella a glance, not cruel, but curious, questioning. Bella flinched, her cheeks burning. They know. They know you don't belong here. You're just the poor bartender who got lucky. Don't mind them, Maria said gently, handing her the cup. They are simply curious. Mr. Willard has never brought anyone here before. Bella blinked. Never. Maria shook her head, a twinkle in her eyes. Not once. Not even a date. Bella stared into her tea, her stomach swirling. Why me? Later that afternoon, she found herself sitting alone on a stone bench in the rose garden, twisting her wedding ring nervously around her finger. The scent of the blooms was heavy in the air, the sun warm on her skin. But the loneliness inside her was colder than ever. She didn't hear Emery approach until his shadow fell across her lap. You're hiding, he said softly. Bella jumped, guilt flashing through her. I'm not, she started, but Emery only lifted an eyebrow, amused and sad all at once. He sat beside her without asking, letting the silence stretch between them. After a long moment, Bella spoke, her voice barely a whisper. I don't fit here, Emery. He turned toward her, his brows drawing together. What do you mean? She laughed bitterly, blinking back tears. Look at me. I don't know how to live like this. The money. The staff. She broke off, pressing a hand to her mouth. I don't belong in your world, she said finally. And you deserve someone who does. Emery's jaw tightened. He reached out, gently pulling her hand away from her face. I don't care about the world, he said roughly. I care about you. Tears slipped down Bella's cheeks, silent and unstoppable. You'll regret it, she whispered. One day you'll wake up and wonder why you're tied to a nobody. Stop, Emery said, his voice breaking. Bella froze. Emery cupped her face between his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. Do you think I care about your past? He asked. About your money? Your clothes? Your background? She couldn't answer. She could barely breathe. I have spent my entire life surrounded by people who only saw what I could give them, he said, his voice raw. Not who I am. Not what I needed. His forehead pressed gently to hers, his breath warm against her skin. But you looked at me and you saw a man. A lonely, broken man. And you didn't run. Bella sobbed, her body trembling. Emery pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her as she cried against his chest. I need you, Bella, he whispered fiercely. Not your perfection. Not your background. Just you. She clung to him, feeling the walls around her heart crack and crumble. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't a mistake. That maybe she deserved to be loved. That evening, Emery brought her a book, an old, worn copy of poetry he had loved as a boy. They curled up together on a plush sofa in the sunroom, as he reads to her. The words washed over her. Soft, beautiful promises of hope and healing. Bella closed her eyes, listening to the steady beat of his heart against her ear. Safe. Home. She was home, the days unfolded softly, like pages of a book Bella had never dared to read before. Breakfasts with Emery. Walks in the garden. Long afternoons curled up with poetry and tea. Every morning, Bella woke expecting the dream to end, and every morning, Emery was there, steady and real. He never rushed her. Never pressured her. He simply stayed. But still, a tiny voice of fear clung to the corners of her heart, whispering doubts she couldn't silence. One afternoon, Emery found her in the sunroom, curled into the window seat with a book resting against her knees. He stood in the doorway, watching her for a long moment before speaking. "I have something to ask you," he said. Bella looked up, her heart flipping nervously. "What is it?" Emery crossed the room and knelt beside her, taking her hands gently in his. "There's a charity gala in the city tomorrow night," he said. "I'm one of the hosts." Bella's stomach tightened. "I want you to come with me," Emery added, squeezing her hands lightly. "As my wife." Bella froze. Formal events. Glamorous people. Cameras. Eyes everywhere. She swallowed hard, her palms beginning to sweat. "Emery. I don't think. I'll be with you," he said softly. "Every second." Bella shook her head, panic rising in her chest. "I don't know how to be that person," she whispered. "I don't know which fork to use or what to say or how to belong." "You belong with me," Emery said fiercely. Tears burned her eyes. "I will not let anyone hurt you," he promised. "Not with me there." Bella wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. She took a shuddering breath and nodded slowly. "I'll go," she whispered. The next day was a whirlwind. Emery had arranged for a team to help her prepare, a stylist, a hairdresser, a makeup artist. Bella protested at first, but Emery only smiled that maddening, patient smile. "Let me spoil you," he said. The dress they chose was breathtaking, a deep emerald green that hugged her growing curves gently, flowing to the floor like water. Her hair was swept up into soft curls, a few tendrils left free to frame her face. When she stepped into the mirror's light, Bella hardly recognized herself. She looked beautiful. Terrified, but beautiful. Emery appeared behind her, his reflection catching hers in the mirror. He was dressed in a black tuxedo, the dark fabric making him look impossibly handsome and powerful. His eyes softened as he looked at her. "You take my breath away," he said quietly. Bella flushed, blinking back tears. He offered her his arm, and together they stepped into the night. The gala was held in a towering glass building overlooking the glittering Thames. The entrance was flooded with flashing cameras, laughing guests, the soft strains of a string quartet drifting through the air. Bella clung to Emery's arm like a lifeline. People turned to look as they entered, curious, assessing. She could hear the whispers start to ripple through the crowd. "That's Emery Willard's wife. Who is she? She looks so ordinary." Bella's heart slammed against her ribs. She wanted to disappear. To run. But Emery tightened his arm around her, anchoring her. He led her through the glittering maze of gowns and jewels and perfect, polished smiles. Everywhere they went, he introduced her proudly. "This is my wife, Bella." He said it with such simple pride that people had no choice but to smile back. Still, the tension in Bella's chest refused to loosen. It snapped when they paused near the grand staircase and a woman in a shimmering silver dress approached. She was stunning, tall, elegant, the kind of beauty that turned heads. Her smile was sharp as glass. "Emery," she purred, ignoring Bella entirely. "It's been too long." Emery's smile was cool. "Genevieve." Genevieve's gaze finally slid to Bella, sharp and cutting. "And who is this?" she asked, the sweetness in her voice as fake as the diamonds dripping from her ears. "My wife," Emery said, his voice a steel blade wrapped in velvet. Genevieve's eyes widened slightly, and for a second, the perfect facade cracked. "A wife," she said lightly. "How unexpected." Bella felt the words like a slap, heat rushing to her face. Before she could shrink away, Emery stepped closer, his hand pressing warm and solid against the small of her back. "I think unexpected is what makes life beautiful," he said smoothly. "Don't you?" Genevieve faltered, then pasted a brittle smile back on her face. "Of course," she said, and swept away into the crowd. Bella stood frozen, trembling. Emery turned to her immediately, cupping her face in his large, steady hands. "Don't you dare believe them," he said, voice rough with emotion. "You are the most beautiful thing in this room." Tears slipped silently down Bella's cheeks. "I don't care about them," he said fiercely. "I care about you. Only you." Bella threw her arms around him, burying her face against his chest. They stood there, wrapped around each other, the noise of the gala fading away into nothing. And for the first time, Bella felt it, truly felt it. She wasn't Emery Willard's mistake. She was his choice. His wife. His future. The days after the gala passed in a golden blur. Something had shifted between them, something quiet but powerful. Bella could feel it every time Emery looked at her. Not pity. Not duty. Love. Real, terrifying, breathtaking love. And slowly, carefully, she let herself fall. One evening, after a long lazy dinner on the sunlit terrace, Bella and Emery sitting on the living room couch. The fire crackled softly in the massive stone fireplace. Outside, the night wrapped around the house like a velvet blanket. Bella tucked her feet under herself, stealing sips of Emery's tea while pretending not to notice the way he watched her. With a soft, almost reverent smile. "You steal everything I own," he teased, plucking his cup from her hands. "You love it," she said, sticking her tongue out at him. Emery laughed, a real laugh, low and rough and beautiful. Bella's heart melted. When he pulled her into his lap, she went willingly, resting her cheek against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. Safe. Home. Hours later, Bella woke to find Emery carrying her upstairs in his arms. "You fell asleep on me," he said, voice full of fake annoyance and real affection. "I'm heavy," she murmured, half asleep. He snorted. "You're lighter than my briefcase." Bella laughed softly, curling against him. He laid her gently on the bed, tucking the blankets around her. But just as he started to pull away, Bella grabbed his hand. "Stay," she whispered. Emery froze. Then slowly, he climbed in. The next morning, something incredible happened. Bella stood at the kitchen counter, eating a slice of toast while Emery scowled over some work papers. She was halfway through a glass of orange juice when she felt it. A flutter. Soft. Tiny. Almost like a bubble popping inside her. She gasped, clutching her stomach. Emery's head snapped up instantly. "Bella." She pressed her hands tighter to her belly, wide-eyed. "The baby," she whispered. I felt the baby move. For a second, Emery just stared at her, stunned, breathless. Then he crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees in front of her. "Can I?" he asked, his voice cracking. Bella nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Emery placed his large, warm hands gently over her stomach, his thumbs brushing slow circles. They stood like that for what felt like forever, Bella crying silently, Emery holding her like she was something sacred. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" she choked out. "For giving me something I never thought I'd have," he said, pressing his forehead to her stomach. "A family." Bella slid to the floor with him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders, sobbing into his neck. They held each other like that, 2 broken people piecing themselves back together. That night, something changed again. They didn't talk about it. They didn't plan it. It just happened. Bella stood at the bedroom window, watching the moonlight pour over the gardens below. Her nightgown was thin, her bare feet cold against the floorboards. She heard Emery enter behind her, the soft click of the door, the quiet sound of his jacket sliding off his shoulders. He came to stand behind her, so close she could feel the heat of his body. For a long moment, they said nothing. Then, very gently, Emery touched her arm, turning her to face him. His eyes searched hers, asking, not demanding. Bella nodded, heart hammering. He cupped her face in his hands, brushing his thumbs over her cheeks. "I love you," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "I'm so damn in love with you, Bella." A sob escaped her lips. She threw her arms around his neck, did her thing desperate, trembling, full of everything she couldn't say out loud. Emery lifted her easily, carrying her to the bed. And for the first time in her life, Bella knew what it meant to be wanted. Truly, deeply wanted. Not for what she could give. Not for what she looked like. But for who she was. Bella. Emery's wife. The mother of his child. The woman he had chosen, again and again. She felt safe. Home. Loved. Always spring arrived with a soft sigh, warm breezes, blooming gardens, the distant hum of bees in the orchards beyond the mansion. Bella felt the change in everything. Not just the season. In herself. In her heart. For the first time in years, she woke up smiling. The fear was still there, sometimes, a shadow in the corners of her mind. But it was quieter now. Fading. One Saturday morning, Bella padded sleepily into the kitchen, expecting to find Emery buried in his endless work papers. Instead, she found a note on the kitchen island, tucked under a single pale pink rose. "Come outside. E." Frowning curiously, Bella followed the path through the back gardens. The air was cool, scented with roses and damp earth. When she rounded the hedge, she stopped, gasping softly. The entire hidden garden had been transformed. Tiny golden fairy lights hung from the low branches of the great oak tree. Soft blankets and pillows were scattered over the grass. A small table was set up with delicate pastries, fresh fruit, and sparkling water. In the center of it all stood Emery, holding a tiny gift-wrapped box, looking nervous. Bella pressed a hand to her mouth, tears filling her eyes. "You did all this?" she whispered. Emery smiled, a little sheepishly. "It's a baby shower. Just for us." Bella laughed through her tears, rushing into his arms. He caught her easily, spinning her once before setting her down gently. "I wanted to celebrate you," he murmured against her hair. "And, our baby." Bella blinked hard, trying not to cry all over him. He led her to the little table and helped her sit down on a soft blanket. Then, grinning, he handed her the small box. With shaking fingers, Bella untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside lay a tiny pair of white baby shoes, so small they barely filled her palm. And tucked beside them, a folded piece of paper. Her breath caught as she unfolded it. It was a letter. "To my son or daughter. You are already the best thing that has ever happened to me. Because you are a piece of your mother, and she is the greatest gift I've ever been given. I promise to protect you. I promise to love you. I promise to love her. Forever. Dad." Bella couldn't stop the sob that broke free. She covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Emery slid onto the blanket beside her, pulling her into his arms. "I meant every word," he said roughly. "You're my family now, Bella. You and the baby. You're everything." Bella clung to him, overwhelmed with love, fear, gratitude. Finally, when she could breathe again, she whispered, "I'm scared." Emery pulled back just enough to see her face. "Of what?" "Of losing this," she said, her voice breaking. "Of waking up and finding out it was all a dream." Emery shook his head fiercely. "This is real," he said. "You're real. And I'm not going anywhere." He took her left hand and lifted it to his lips, pressing a kiss to her wedding ring. "As long as you wear this," he said, "you're mine. And I'm yours." Bella laughed shakily, brushing tears from her cheeks. I guess you're stuck with me, she whispered. Emery smiled, a slow, breathtaking thing that made her heart ache. There's no one else I'd rather be stuck with. As the sun set in a blaze of pink and gold, Emery pulled out his phone and turned on a soft love song. He held out his hand. Dance with me. Bella laughed, embarrassed. There's no one here to see, he said gently. Just us. Heart pounding, Bella stood and let him pull her into his arms. They swayed slowly under the fairy lights, the music wrapping around them like a promise. Bella rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart under her ear. Safe. Home. Loved. Always, the early weeks of summer wrapped the mansion in gold and green. Bella's belly grew rounder every day, a living miracle stretching under her hand. Emery doted on her endlessly, insisting she rest, cooking her meals, slipping tiny love notes into her books when she wasn't looking. Life had never been sweeter. Never felt more real. One morning, Bella stood by the kitchen window, cradling a cup of tea. The garden outside swayed in the breeze, glowing under the rising sun. She smiled, pressing her hand to her bump as the baby fluttered softly inside her. Safe. Loved. Ours. The world was perfect. Until it wasn't. It started with the fainting spell. 1 second she was laughing at something Emery said, the next, the world tilted violently. Bella staggered, clutching the counter for support. Blackness ate at the edges of her vision. Bella! Emery shouted, rushing to catch her as she collapsed into his arms. Everything was a blur after that, flashing lights, shouting voices, the terrifying cold of fear curling deep into her bones. At the hospital, Bella lay hooked to machines that beeped and hummed like alien creatures. Emery refused to leave her side, pacing like a caged lion. The doctor, a kind-eyed woman, spoke in low, serious tones. Preeclampsia, she said. Her blood pressure is dangerously high. We have to monitor her closely. If it worsens, we may have to deliver early. Bella stared up at the ceiling, feeling the world fall away beneath her. Too soon. The baby was too small. She wasn't ready. They weren't ready. Tears slid silently down her temples into her hair. Later that night, when the hospital was quiet and dark, Emery sat by her bed, holding her hand between both of his. His head was bowed, his broad shoulders tense. Bella stirred weakly. Emery, she rasped. He lifted his head instantly, his eyes wild with grief and love. Shoo, baby, he whispered, squeezing her hand gently. I'm here. I'm right here. Bella blinked at him, her heart breaking. I'm scared, she whispered. I know, he said hoarsely, brushing her hair back from her damp forehead. But you're not alone. You'll never be alone again. A tear slid down his cheek, the first she had ever seen him shed. For so long, he said, voice cracking, I thought love was weakness. I thought needing someone made you weak. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a fierce peck to her knuckles. But you taught me that love is the strongest thing in the world. Bella sobbed quietly, too weak to move, too overwhelmed to speak. I love you, he whispered. You and our baby. You're my life, Bella. He lowered his forehead to their joined hands, his whole body trembling. I won't let you go, he vowed. I don't care what it takes. I will fight for you. I will stay. Bella closed her eyes, letting the sound of his voice wrap around her, stronger than any medicine. Safe. Loved. Ours. Time blurred after that. Tests. Medications. Whispered consultations in the hallway. Bella floated through it all, anchored only by Emery's steady presence, his hand always holding hers, his voice always in her ear. You're doing so good, baby, he whispered when the pain was too much. I'm right here, love, he said when fear clawed at her throat. You're not alone, he promised when the darkness threatened to swallow her whole. Finally, after 3 terrifying days, the crisis passed. Bella woke to find the machines quieter, the doctor smiling gently. You're stable, she said. The baby's holding strong. You're both fighters. Bella burst into tears, sobbing helplessly into Emery's chest as he gathered her into his arms. You did it, he whispered fiercely, pecking her temple again and again. You did it, Bella. No, she sobbed. We did it. That night, tucked into the hospital bed with Emery curled up awkwardly beside her, Bella drifted into the first real sleep she had had in days. And as she dreamed, she felt it, the tiny, steady thump of her baby's heartbeat inside her. Alive. Strong. Loved. Just like her. The first few days back home felt like stepping out of a nightmare into a dream. Bella lay curled up on the giant bed, sunlight warming her face through the open windows. Birdsong floated in from the gardens. And somewhere downstairs, she could hear Emery's deep voice, giving strict, bossy instructions to Maria about Bella's meals and medications. Bella smiled sleepily. Bossy or not, she wouldn't have survived the last few days without him. Later that morning, Emery appeared in the doorway, a tray balanced in his hands. Breakfast for my queen, he said, beaming. Bella laughed, sitting up against the pillows. You're spoiling me. Get used to it, he said, setting the tray carefully across her lap. You scared the hell out of me. I'm never letting you lift a finger again. Bella rolled her eyes fondly, but her throat tightened at the love shining in his eyes. No one had ever looked at her like that. Like she was precious. Like she was home. A few days later, when Bella was strong enough to move around, Emery had another surprise. He led her carefully down the hallways, one hand warm and steady on her back. They stopped in front of a door Bella had never opened before. Emery hesitated, looking almost shy. I was going to wait, he said. But I think we need this. He pushed the door open. Inside was a nursery, a soft, dreamlike room painted in gentle creams and golds. A tiny crib sat under the window, its white canopy billowing slightly in the breeze. Shelves lined one wall, already half filled with stuffed animals and children's books. A rocking chair sat beside a cozy lamp. Bella pressed a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. You did this? She whispered. Emery nodded, shoving his hands into his pockets awkwardly. I wanted. He broke off, clearing his throat. I wanted our baby to come home to a world full of love. Not just walls. Not just things. Tears spilled down Bella's cheeks as she crossed the room and touched the edge of the crib. It was real. It was happening. Their family. Their future. They spent the afternoon painting tiny stars on the ceiling, laughing when they both got more paint on themselves than the walls. Bella wore one of Emery's old shirts, huge and soft over her bump. He wore paint-streaked jeans and no shoes, humming under his breath as he moved carefully around the room. Every once in a while, he would glance over at her with a look so full of awe and tenderness it stole her breath away. As the sun began to set, they collapsed together onto the floor, surrounded by half-empty paint cans and crumpled cloths. Emery shifted, sliding down onto his side. He propped himself up on one elbow and placed his hand carefully on her stomach. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared at the slight movements under his palm. Then, softly, he began to speak. Hey, little one, he murmured, his voice low and rough. It's your dad. Bella closed her eyes, tears slipping free. I just want you to know, Emery continued, that you were wanted. Every second. Even before you existed. He swallowed hard. I'm gonna mess up sometimes. I'm gonna get things wrong. But I'll always love you. Always protect you. You and your mom, you're my world now. He leaned down and pressed a peck to her. Bella covered her mouth, sobbing quietly, overwhelmed by the depth of his love. "You saved me, Bella," he whispered into her hair. "You and this baby. You gave me something to live for. Something to fight for." Bella clung to him, feeling their heartbeats blend into one. Home wasn't a place. It wasn't the mansion. It wasn't the nursery. It was Emery. His arms. His heart. His love. Home was him. The first contraction hit in the middle of the night. Bella jerked upright in bed, clutching her swollen belly, her breath catching. Pain. Sharp. Deep. Real. She gasped, trying to breathe through it. Beside her, Emery stirred instantly, his instincts sharp even in sleep. "Bella?" His voice was rough, thick with sleep but already full of concern. "What's wrong?" I think. She panted. "I think it's time." Emery was out of bed in a flash, grabbing clothes, shoes, keys. Okay, he muttered, more to himself than to her. "We've got this. Bags are packed. Hospital's 15 minutes away. We've got this." He helped her dress, his hands steady even though she could feel the tremor in his fingers. "You're doing amazing, baby," he whispered, pecking her forehead. "We're going to meet our baby tonight." Tears pricked Bella's eyes, from pain, from fear, from the overwhelming love shining in his gaze. The drive to the hospital was a blur of contractions and whispered encouragement. Emery never let go of her hand, even while speeding down the empty roads, his jaw tight with tension. "You're strong, Bella," he said over and over. "You're stronger than anyone I know. You can do this." She clung to his words like a lifeline. At the hospital, everything moved in a rush. Nurses. Doctors. Bright lights. Monitors. Emery refused to leave her side, even when they tried to shoo him away. "I'm staying," he said fiercely, daring anyone to argue. Bella fought through wave after wave of pain, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was so tired. So scared. At one point, she whimpered, "I can't do this, Emery. I can't." He gripped her hand tighter, pressing their foreheads together. "Yes, you can," he said fiercely. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met. And I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Another contraction racked her body, stealing her breath. "Come on, love," Emery whispered, his voice shaking with emotion. "Fight for us. For our baby." Bella summoned everything she had left, every ounce of strength, every scrap of hope, and pushed. A tiny cry pierced the air, thin and trembling. Bella sobbed brokenly, collapsing back against the bed. The nurse lifted a tiny, wriggling bundle and placed it against her chest. Bella looked down and forgot how to breathe. A baby. Their baby. Dark curls. Tiny fists. Eyes squeezed shut, mouth open in a wailing protest. Perfect. So perfect. Tears streamed down Bella's face as she stroked the baby's tiny back, her heart splitting open with love. Emery crouched beside the bed, his head bowed against her shoulder, shaking with silent sobs. "You did it," he whispered hoarsely. "God, Bella, you did it." She turned her head and kissed his tear-streaked face. "We did it," she corrected. He looked up then, his eyes raw and shining. "Thank you," he whispered. "For our baby. For our family. For saving me." Bella smiled through her tears. "We saved each other," she said. The nurse cleared her throat gently. "Would you like to hold him properly, Dad?" Emery's head snapped up, shock and wonder flooding his face. He nodded dumbly, carefully taking the tiny bundle into his arms. He held the baby like he was made of glass, cradling him against his broad chest. "Hi," he whispered, tears falling freely now. "Hi, little one." Bella watched, her heart bursting. She had never seen anything more beautiful than Emery Willard, ruthless, powerful Emery, cradling their newborn son with trembling, reverent hands. "I'm your dad," Emery said, his voice breaking. "And I'm going to love you for the rest of my life." He lowered his head and pressed a tender kiss to the baby's forehead. Bella closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the fierce, impossible joy surging through her. Safe. Home. Loved. Forever. The day they brought their baby home was the most beautiful day of Bella's life. The sun was shining, birds sang in the garden, and the mansion felt alive in a way it never had before. Emery carried the car seat into the house with the carefulness of a man carrying the most precious thing in the world. Bella followed, her heart full to bursting. Maria, the housekeeper, met them at the door, tears glistening in her kind eyes. "Welcome home, little one," she whispered, peeking into the car seat and clucking over the tiny baby boy. Bella smiled, blinking back tears. Home. They were finally home. The first weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, endless feedings, and a kind of tiredness Bella had never known before. But it was beautiful, too, raw and real and filled with tiny, perfect moments. She would wake in the middle of the night to find Emery already up, cradling their son in the rocking chair, humming a low, off-key lullaby. She would stumble into the nursery to find Emery changing diapers with a look of fierce determination, as if he were negotiating a business deal instead of fighting tiny squirming legs. They learned together, clumsily, messily, but with so much love it made Bella's chest ache. And through it all, Emery never stopped looking at her like she was the sun itself, something bright and warm he couldn't believe he was lucky enough to touch. One golden afternoon, Bella stood on the terrace, rocking the baby gently against her chest. She stared out at the garden where Emery had once strung up fairy lights and danced with her under the stars. She thought about the girl she had been back then, scared, lonely, broken. She hardly recognized her now. She was a mother. A wife. A woman who had survived heartbreak and fear and built a life from the ashes of her old one. Tears blurred her vision, but they were happy tears this time. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a family. A home. A forever. That evening, Emery appeared at her side, their son bundled in his arms. "Come with me," he said, his eyes shining with secrets. He led her through the gardens, past blooming roses and tall hedges, to the same hidden spot under the oak tree. Bella gasped. Fairy lights glittered above them like stars. A simple white arch stood beneath the tree, draped in soft fabric and fresh flowers. Maria stood nearby, beaming, holding a small book in her hands. And at Emery's side, he cradled their baby, wrapped in a tiny white blanket. Bella pressed a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. "What is this?" she whispered. Emery smiled, a little shy, a little awed. "A vow renewal," he said. "For us. For our family. For everything we survived." Bella sobbed, her heart overflowing. The ceremony was short and perfect. Maria read a simple blessing, her voice trembling with emotion. And then Emery took Bella's hands in his, their son nestled between them. "I promised you once that you wouldn't be alone," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Today, I promise again. I promise to love you. To protect you. To fight for you. For our son. For the life we've built." Tears streamed down Bella's face. "I promise," she whispered back, "to love you. To trust you. To stand with you. Always." Emery leaned forward, pressing a slow, reverent kiss to her lips. Their son gurgled between them, making them both laugh through their tears. That night, they sat together under the stars, their baby sleeping peacefully between them. Bella leaned her head on Emery's shoulder, closing her eyes, breathing in the sweet scent of grass and roses and the man she loved. "Happy?" Emery whispered. Bella smiled, tears slipping free. More than I ever dreamed, she whispered back. Above them, the fairy lights swayed in the breeze, glowing softly. Safe. Home. Loved. Forever.